Hello everyone, welcome back again to NPTEL online course on research methodology for planning and architectural studies. So today we are at lecture number 7, that is research process part 2. So in part 1 we have discussed the first two steps, defining the research problem and literature review and its importance in the overall process. So in the same line, in today's lecture what we are going to learn another few steps of the research process, that is formulation of hypothesis or research questions. So, in this particular case definitely some of the research may not have the hypothesis in that way. So, for that research question is much more pertinent, but in some cases we do have the hypothesis, we will try to see it. Then we will discuss about the preparing the research design, that okay, once you identify the research questions and frame your objectives, then how to conduct your research. So, that research design part starting from sampling strategy, sample size determination, development of questionnaire, identifying source of data, and then also conducting that particular information. After that, in this also we will try to understand the sample size criteria and also the data collection. So, for all such steps, as I already mentioned earlier, we will have dedicated lecture on this where we will talk about each and every aspect in detail with examples pertinent to your planning and architectural studies, and sometimes I can also give you the other studies for easy to understand, and then we will summarize the result. So, this is the overall process that already we have discussed in our part 1 of this research process. So, here we will mainly focus on this particular part where we discuss the part like component 3, 4 and 5. So, first step is the formulation of hypothesis. So, what is hypothesis? A hypothesis is a clear and testable statement or prediction, or you can say assumption about the relationship between two or more variables, right. So, let us take one example. Now, if our hypothesis is that the comfort condition within a bus, say for example, I am giving you another example from transport planning point of view, that okay, in this case that we want to investigate the impact of bus comfort on passengers decision on whether to ride bus or not. In this case basically if I simplify it, the problem is that even if the government is giving emphasis to promote the public transport, introducing new buses, but still there is a decline in the ridership, people are not using it. So, there are many such kind of reasons for which it is not working fine. People are going away from this particular public transport. It may be that they have other alternative, good alternative which is much more affordable, but probably it is not, because public transportation is probably the cheapest option in terms of fare. But there are other issues, even if you are making this fare very low to make it competitive and to give access to the the people or the segment of the society having low income. But at the same time, if we consider other parameters like comfort condition in a bus, overall experience in a bus, so probably that may also give you some sort of put some impact on the decision making, whether I will select the bus for my journey or not. So, similarly, say for example, in a particular city, we would like to know that okay, the impact of the bus comfort within the bus, how it is going to determine people's choice on using bus or not. So, in that case my assumption that if we improve the comfort situation, ridership will increase. So, that is my assumption. So, then I can make a particular prediction that increasing comfort will increase the ridership, and then we just call this is the hypothesis. Now, out of my results it may happen like that okay, I was true. People, based on the survey, it reveals that okay, that if you improve the comfort condition within the bus, the ridership is going to rise. but it may be something like can come out that okay, no, increasing or decreasing comfort condition within the bus will not change anything in the ridership. So then my assumption is going to be proved wrong. So in all those cases, both the case will be a research. If my first assumption that okay, increase in the particular comfort condition will increase the ridership is a true case, so we'll make sure that we'll increase the comfort to increase the ridership. But if it is not the case that okay, increasing or decreasing will not really make it, then probably it will lead to that what other things is actually influencing. We can focus on that rather than just considering the comfort. So this is just a very small example, but the complexity may be little more when we investigate together, because there would be something like in pair we require. It's not only the comfort, probably one may also look into certain other degree of comfort. So it totally depending on how we frame the research questions and how we want to assess it. That in bus comfort, what we would like to portray, is it like getting a seat or standing in a comfortable position, or it is something like also you are having the AC environment and the Wi-Fi facilities. So like that, these are the assumption and prediction. So in this case, defining the variables and factors that need to be measured, so we need to make it. Determining the relationship, so whether like the relationship is positive, whether this is a cause and effect kind of thing, or it is correlation, that it may be positively related, it negatively related, is directly or it is inversely related. Hypothesis need to be very clear, concise and specific, and also measurable and testable. If we take some hypothesis which cannot be tested, then probably that will not be a good hypothesis. The outcome of the research should be clearly mentioned while framing the hypothesis. Anticipate certain facts through hypothesis, that what you think that okay, this could be the possible reason, you can take up that as a research hypothesis. So in hypothesis we normally define in this way, that the statement that there is a no significant difference or effect or relationship between variables. So in this case we call it null hypothesis. So we frame the assumption like that, understanding okay, there might be a relationship, but we frame the questions like there is no relationship, there is no impact, and then normally in research we would like to see the result like rejecting null hypothesis, that okay, there is significant impact. So this is something. Alternative hypothesis, which is just contradict to the null hypothesis. So this null hypothesis can be just a statement, it can be a value, that we say that okay, more than 50% is the particular result that we are expecting. So it may not come 50%, if maybe it is lower or it may be higher, so that in this case we can think of the alternative hypothesis. Now next, if that part is clear, now we move to the next part, that is the preparing the research design. So where you have proper hypothesis, research objective. Now in this stage we just go for designing a structure, plan or roadmap how to conduct the study. So this is going to provide you a guideline for collecting relevant information with minimal expenditure of effort, time and money. Why it is referred as a minimal expenditure of effort? So in this case it is the expenditure of your time, the effort. If you are very clear that for my research this data is required, I can identify these are the sources, then it will not take much time to gather the information. If we are clueless and we do not have any idea before just reaching to that particular stage, that okay, what data is required, then we can keep roaming here and there and we find difficulty in collecting the information. So in this particular case there are few features of the research design. The first one is the exploration. It is used to explore a new topic, phenomena or area of interest where researcher needs gain insight. It also like the initial stage where you form the hypothesis. Description: type of research design that involves observing or describing the characteristics or behavior. So, that is also sometimes you need to identify the type of research. So, whether in my case it is a qualitative, fully qualitative research, it is fully quantitative research, or it is a mixed method that we are thinking of. Whether my research is something like action research, whether my research is something like conceptual research, or it is totally empirical research where I want to do something with the numerical values. So, that is something required at this stage. Then next is the diagnosis. Scientific investigation and studies aimed at improving the method, tools and process involved in identifying this issue. So, if we try to identify, if we want to synthesize some of such kind of aspect, so for that we should know the right method, we should also know the tools that can be used, because method and tools, they are not same. Method is certain algorithm by which you can solve something, but tool will facilitate you. It may be some software, it may be some algorithm that you write in certain language, and the overall process involved. So, if you are very thorough about it, it will help you to solve the problem very easily. Experimentation: in this case, what you need to do, you have to administer one or more independent variables to observe the effect of dependent variable while controlling the external factors. So, while establishing the relationship that okay, this is the dependent variable and this is independent. I give you another example related to the water consumption in a city. So, in this case, per capita water consumption, if we say that this is a dependent variable and it will depend on certain other aspect, that quality of water, continuity of water, like for how many duration it is being supplied. Then the cost of water, if there is a tariff system, if there is some kind of metering, and there might be other few things associated with that. Those are independent variables. So, now if I want to understand in this case, we can always make a multivariate analysis, or maybe in some cases we just go for, like, we would like to understand the impact of continuity of water to the per capita supply, where other things are making some kind of control parameter and make it constant. Now, in this particular case, slide is very important. While preparing a research design, following should be considered effectively. Then first one is the research problem, because that is the starting point, and for that what specific objective that you have identified for the investigation, that you need to check, and accordingly it will help you for the research design. Nature of study, whether it is descriptive type, whether it is some sort of exploratory where you can explore the new thing, or whether it is something like explanatory, or it is analytical. So, we have discussed in detail in our previous discussion on the type of research methods. So, there we have discussed all this. Then research objective, it should be something a very articulated goals, and then objectives of the research that you define. Then identify the gap, literature review, research questions and hypotheses that we have discussed, research approach. So, in this case again, one is the method, the approach is quantitative approach, qualitative approach, mixed approach. So, that should align with the objective, because it is not always it is the same, that if I am going for qualitative, everything is qualitative. There is no such kind of mandate that you cannot deviate among this qualitative, quantitative or mixed method. It all depends on the objective, how you want to tackle it. Next, the sampling strategy that you are going to identify. So, what is the target population, what kind of sampling can suit you better, because suppose if you want to do for a mass scale some perception study, and you want to deploy some kind of probabilistic sampling like random sampling. So, you picked up any population randomly which is representative of the population, and then we can do this, or else it is just a non-probabilistic confidence sampling that for my convenience I picked up them, which will represent the population. Data collection method, in this case choose the right method for the data collection. Okay, whether this data will be collected like from primary source or secondary source, what kind of data type or nature of data that we are requiring. Research instrument, design select instrument, it may be questionnaire, it can be a structured interview, it can be a test. So, definitely some experiment that if we want to target, so then we have to go for testing that particular experiment. Then after that, which is important to understand the variables and the measures of our research, that what are the factors that we are going to investigate, what are those kind of variables, factors, attributes. We will discuss in detail that the meaning or is there any difference between all those terminologies which is required for my research. After that, once it is fixed, we have the data analysis plan, which will outline the statistical or qualitative methods or quantitative methods based on the data collected. Develop a realistic timeline for each phase of the research, that how much time you are going to give for your literature review, how much you are going to give for your development of questionnaire, development of hypothesis, development of like the data collection itself, how many weeks or month or day that you require. If it is a experiment thing, how many experiment that you need to repeat, each experiment how much time it is normally taking. So, accordingly you can phase out your entire program. So, objective 1 will take say this many x number of weeks, within that again you can subdivide. So, this is very good structuring of your entire research plan, so that you can always check your status where you are, and if you are lagging, so you have to speed up or something, like you can manage your time. Then the resources is very important, that in your entire research what kind of resources that you require, whether it can be a equipment for the experiment, whether it is something like some of the persons or experts that you want to engage for some expert opinion based research, or maybe focus group discussion. So, identify the funding required, how much budget that you have, like if it is some kind of costly experiment, that how many experiments are to be repeated and which is required as a minimum trial. So, for that how much budget you have. Ethical consideration, this is something like you need to take the participant rights, confidential consent, so that you will be in a safe position, that you are not misuse those kind of information and without their approval. Then also it is important that, as I mentioned, that for a researcher it is not that with one particular research topic will solve the broad umbrella of that particular field. So, here it is important to state the limitation in scope, in terms of its generalizability or the validity of the findings. So, in entire thing that you have to also limit your research and state it very clearly that okay, this is out of the scope, and then that particular thing definitely needs certain kind of deliberation, discussion with your co-researcher, your supervisors, so that you will know that okay, this is a true limitation of your research. The common mistakes that we find among the students or the PhD scholar, so everything which is not achievable or not achieved to a particular case put into the limitation. Okay, sometimes even it is something like in some of the report they would like to mention that because of time I could not able to do the data collection. So, time is the limitation. So, such kind of things you have to think that okay, what is exactly the true limitation? Is it truly that it is overestimated and the time is really short, or it is something underestimated, or it is not related to the time because that particular student probably could not able to do the data collection on time, and that is why it is written like that. So, we have to be very clear about stating our limitation. The next stage is the determining the sample size. So, what is the sample? So, sample is a subset of a population. So, what is population? So, in common terminology, population we all know, like population of a city, for a country, in a boundary, how many people they live in that area. But in research, the population refer to a target population, or the target set, you can say. So, if you consider the target population as set, so sample is the subset of that, which will have the capability to represent the entire population. Say it is something like that. In our household, it is very common activity, like we have seen our in kitchen, that when you are boiling the rice to cook, so it is not required to check each and every rice, okay, to check whether the rice is cooked properly or not. What we normally do, randomly after certain time, we just take out some sample, some piece, and then we just try to smash it. If it is cooked, then we say that okay, the rice is cooked. Similarly, for a particular batch of say fruit or apple, if we find that okay, randomly 2-3 apples are, it's not in good quality, so there is some sort of assumption that we can make that okay, this particular batch is not good. So, like that, it is testing of this particular aspect. In a class, if you want to test the overall understanding of mathematics in a class, so you can also pick up some student and ask few questions. So, normally in our school days, we used to get those kind of surprise inspection, and then always they ask few questions to understand that what is our learning is in a right track or not. So, those kind of things is some kind of evidence of sampling. So, for our research in planning especially, or in even architecture, we do the sampling in many cases too, especially where we want to understand the people's experience, perception and other thing, where sampling is very crucial. So, what is population? It is a specific group that researcher is interested in studying and intended to generalize the finding. Now, in that case, sample is the subset of the population. Here you can see that if this is the entire population, so this particular area is taken as a sample. The only thing this sample should represent. So, the quality, whatever, like if maybe the perception, it may be the some kind of value, cultural value. So, this many population in sample, whatever they are actually representing, so we assume that this is the overall behavior. So, why sampling is required? The first reason is that we cannot survey each and every people, because that is a time depending thing, and also it will involve cost. And whenever there is a probability that okay, the sample we picked up is a statistically representative sample, then we do not need to investigate each and every household. So, if we go to a particular EWS apartment to study about their particular building design or the way they are lived in, so we do not need to investigate each and every house in that. So, probably if we just see some of them which is representative, then that is enough for conducting that particular research. The goal of sampling to obtain information from a smaller group that represent the larger population, already I have mentioned. Types of sampling, or you can say the sample, in this case we can go for a probabilistic sample, where it can be simple random sampling, it can be systematic sampling, cluster sampling, stratified sampling, or it can be non-probabilistic, where there is no probability. Say for example, like I want to pick up one particular person from a population, and it is a random thing, I picked up someone random. So, in this case it is the selection of that particular person is equally likely. So, it can be anyone. So, I am not biased that I picked up the best student in the class, so that I will, or maybe the the student who performed least in the class to pick up and then try to ask certain questions. So, it is totally random, or it may be something like convenience sampling or quota sampling or heterogeneous sampling. as a non probability. So, there is no such kind of probability, it is based on convenience. Okay, I just take up based on my convenience. So, for all such kind of sampling strategy and all, we will have a detailed discussion in our follow up lectures. So, here I am not extending it further. Next stage is the data collection stage. So, in this case, the process of gathering, recording or organizing information or data, collecting data from different sources for our analysis purpose, for our interpretation and decision making. This is the overall stage of data collection. So, it can be primary data survey, can be done through face to face survey, it can be telephonic survey, it can be postal survey, online survey, focus group discussion, it can be Delphi survey like something like expert opinion survey, or it can be secondary data survey where it can be through the literature review, it can be some kind of archival research, it can be content analysis, meta analysis, administrative data that you collect, it can be census data which is also very common for us doing research in the planning, then research report, publicly available different data set. So, these are different information that we can use it, but at the same time we will have such kind of discussion in our follow up lectures that okay, it is not that whether data is available and we just simply collect it and use it. So, there is some sort of data check in terms of consistency, validity or completeness, so that it will not create any problem in our findings, or somebody may challenge that okay, the data authenticity is a problem. So, in such cases the action should be taken to ensure that the survey is under statistical control, so that the collected information is accordance with the predefined standard and accuracy. So, it is something like once we have certain sort of analysis in our mind, certain method that we are going to use it when it is defined in the research design stage. So, our data collection will be as per. So, if we want to do a choice modeling, so we need a choice data. So, in that case we cannot just deviate and collect some information and then that will not be useful for my analysis and that will not solve my purpose. So, you fix what kind of analysis that you are looking for and that should have enough logic to select that particular analysis technique which will satisfy the objective or answer the research questions, and accordingly you go and collect the information, so that it will be in accordance to that. So, with that we summarize this particular part of the research process discussion. So, here we have understood the hypothesis where we assume certain relationship and we will try to test it through our analysis, and we will see whether my assumption is true or it is false. Now, at the same time we also discuss the different purpose of making a research design and different stages of it. We discussed about the sample size and its importance, why we require sample, why sample can help us to do our research and represent the population in general, and also discussed very briefly about the data collection. The main reason that I was little brief in all this aspect in this slide, because for each of them like sample size, data collection, hypothesis, we will have detailed discussion, so that all such kind of doubts that you may have now, maybe after that detailed discussion it will not be there. Even if there is some sort of doubt in this, please write us in the forum, we will get back to you. With this we will move on to the last stage of the research process diagram, that the left with the data analysis and interpretation, that we will discuss in our next lecture. So, these are few of the study references that you can go through. So, our next lecture on the same line, research process part 3, will be the last part of the research process discussion, and we will be discussing in the next lecture. So, till then, thank you for joining. Hope this course is useful for your entire thought process. Thank you.